Today's top picks from our commentary arm Reuters Breakingviews, why the Eurozone could still clash over Spain's bank bailout, and the best case scenario for BP in Russia. With me now to discuss these stories is Reuters Breakingviews assistant editor Chris Hughes. Chris, let's start with Spain. Plenty unanswered questions, but you can't have an inquisition without an inquisitor.
Well, that's right. People are talking about how this is a sort of condition-light bailout for Spain and its banking system, which is true in a sense. I mean, it's not as if the Spanish government has got to introduce any more austerity measures. There are no specific macro targets, but there is this condition around reform of the banking sector itself, and there isn't much detail about, as you say, who would do this kind of inquisition on the banking sector, and there isn't any detail really about kind of what it would do either. Now, it's quite clear what the problem is. I mean, if you think about the difficulties that the Spanish saving banks, the CAS, got into, they're very entwined with local politics. There's, clear cronyism, shot through the system. So, it's clear what the problem is in terms of how what you want to get away from. But who is going to oversee this?
Does it matter? Well, I mean, if it's the EU or the EBA, does it actually matter who's
you mentioned the EBA, but I mean the credibility of the EBA is not sky high. I mean, we've had repeated EBA stress tests which have proved completely ineffective in terms of actually putting banks through the worst case scenario. So it's not even clear who has the expertise within Europe to go into Spain's banking sector and seek to move it forward. And then and from Spain's point of view, when they find out who it is and what their agenda is, are they just going to sort of lie down and go, "Oh, that's great. Okay, we've got your money," but
they may not have a choice because they're taking 100 billion euros.
But I mean, this is good. When you see these big headline deals on bailouts, it's very easy to be reassured. But the question is, the devil really is in the detail here, and we don't have the detail yet on how this is going to be implemented. So as ideas come out about who is basically going to grasp the nettle, who's going to have the responsibility for grasping the nettle on Spanish banking reform, I think you can expect probably a little bit of friction and tension to emerge.
Indeed. Okay, on to Russia. BP and Russia. Of course, BP selling its 50% stake in its tie-up with TNK. You think, the speculation Rosneft might be the buyer, but that's not the end of the story for BP in Russia, is it?
Well, it may not be. In fact, the best case scenario we think for BP would be that if it could obviously swap this 50% stake in the TNK BP joint venture for a large amount of cash. I mean, analysts are talking about $25 billion for the whole stake, but cash plus some access to other Russian exploration. Now, of course, it had a deal like this with Rosneft last year, which fell apart. In fact, that was a deal that became so controversial it actually has led to the problems with TNK BP. But if it can somehow get Rosneft as a buyer and then team up with Rosneft on other Russian exploration, that would be a great development for BP. Now, of course, we've seen
Does BP want to stay in Russia given the problems it's had?
It doesn't really. I mean, it's very hard to ignore Russia. I mean, if it doesn't stay in Russia, where else does it go? I mean, there aren't many places in the world where you have a sort of optimal combination of great acreage plus, a really helpful jurisdiction. So it's as good as anywhere else, Russia. And even though other Western oil companies have exploited BP's difficulties in Russia over the last year and signed deals themselves for really promising prospects, there's a vast area that remains to be explored. So there is potential if BP can play the politics right, which has played very badly in the past. If it can actually read where the power really lies and
I think we know where the power lies in Russia.
Well, I mean, it's very hard. I mean, last time they got it spectacularly wrong. They thought they had the backing at the highest level for the Rosneft deal, and yet it still proved incredibly tricky. So if they can get it right this time and get access to some really promising prospects, then this actually could turn out quite well.
Indeed. Chris, thank you very much. That's all for now. My thanks there to Chris Hughes. Well, for more agenda-setting financial insight, watch our US Breaking Views show every day at 12:30 Eastern, 17:30 BST. I'm Jamie McGeever. This is Reuters.